Hey gang, welcome to Scuba Dive Magazine and welcome to Top 10. This week it's advice for new instructors or dive masters, dive guys, to help you out with your qualifying course and when you're actually in the real world with actual students, because students are a funny breed and they can be very unpredictable at times, and even with all of your experience they will always come up with something new to test you. So I've come up with some helpful tips that should hopefully make you a bit of a better instructor. The first thing that you need to do is slow down. You can't do things in the water at your normal natural pace. You have already spent hours in the water mastering your fin kicks and efficiency in the water doing things, but many new divers, they've never worn a pair of fins before. So when you're leading a dive, if you go at just your normal pace, not even a fast pace, just a chilled out, relaxed pace, you're still going to easily leave them behind in the dust. So go at maybe a quarter speed, seriously that slow, otherwise you're just going to be leaving students behind. The same goes for demonstrating skills. It's great that you can remove your mask and you can clear it in just a few seconds. Well done you, but demonstrating skills, you need to really slow each individual section down so that students can see all of the little details. And remember that you're putting on a show so that each and every single student can see each and every single part of that skill and how to do it. If you really overemphasize each skill, your examiners and your students are going to love it. Scuba diving does have an air of easygoing, kind of party people kind of culture, but as a professional diver who gets paid for what they do, you are always working when you're in front of students and other divers in or out of the water. It's very common that you'll hang out with divers in between dives and at the end of the day, and if you get hammered or you're acting stupid, dancing on tables or something, then divers the next day, they're not really going to trust you and you'll probably be looking for alternative employment before long. You need to also think about your equipment. As much as you may not like it, you are the image of the diving industry for a lot of people, and if you're still rocking tattered wonky dive gear that you bought secondhand like 5 years ago, then you kind of need to up your game. I mean, I know we don't get paid a lot of money to buy a new set of dive equipment each season, but it still needs to be professional. Otherwise, the general image of the dive industry looks bad and people will very quickly find something else to do because, yeah, scuba divers, even the professionals, only wear this tatty secondhand wetsuit. Build yourself a routine. This is why it's great not to go from zero to hero. You need to build that kind of repertoire by spending time with students, but not actually as an instructor. Personally, I found it much easier when I pulled together a little routine that I'd play for each skill and scenario that you build up over time. It's a bit like a comedy act, where you run certain bits and you say certain things, and if that works well in front of a lot of students, then you use that section going forwards. But if this part didn't particularly work, then you just bin it and find something to replace it. And eventually you build up an entire repertoire that you can constantly just improve and hone for each individual training course. And for that, it's good to watch and listen to other instructors and guides and kind of use their kind of bits. If something worked well for them, just try and add that to your repertoire. If they say a certain something that gets a good reaction from the group, then yeah, add that to your routine and learn from one another and mix up your own routine as well over time so it doesn't get stale for you. But I found it much easier to have certain like acts that I would run through in certain situations. So you have one for your discover scuba diving, you have one for your open water and each individual skill, and when it comes to teach that later down the road, yeah, you just play that over again in front of a new set of students. Now, I know that I've just told you to come up with your own script and your act, but remember that you need to stay within the boundaries of your training organization. If you start pushing your boundaries and going outside the specs of your training agency courses, you start, missing things out, then you can very quickly find yourself in very hot water all by yourself, and very legal hot water. As long as you stick to the training agency guidelines and you don't do something stupid, then if something goes wrong, and of course it's deemed that it was the course and the procedures that was what went wrong, then your training agency should cover your back on that side of things, because the legal issue is with their training standards, not you in particular. But of course, if you stray away from those guidelines, you start doing it your own way, you're going off book because you figure, it'll be fun for the divers to go a little bit deeper on this dive, or skip over skills because you just can't be bothered to do that particular skill with all these students, you're going to be on your own for those actions. And obviously, if you do anything where you would normally expect to be sued in normal life, then you're probably going to get sued. Obviously, this is not legal advice, but yeah, just try and stick to the script. On time is 5 minutes late. You should always plan and prepare things as early as possible, because a lot of things are going to be dependent on past you being organized so that present you doesn't look stupid or put somebody in danger. Think through absolutely everything for the day ahead and pack and prepare things as early as possible so that you're not rushing at the last minute or doing without something when it actually comes to it because past you wasn't organized enough to put it in the bag. Think about your paperwork, any tools and spare parts, replacement parts as well, so that you can save someone's dive with a single O-ring, but if you have the O-ring but you don't have the spanner to actually undo something, then it's not much good. You have to think like a pessimist. What could go wrong and what do I actually need to bring with me to fix it? You'll soon gather together a grab bag with just everything that you need inside of it, but always be thinking about what could go wrong and what you can do as early as possible to prevent it. It's very tempting and easy to see a new diver struggling with something and to just do it for them because you've done it 100 times, but it's very important for you to let them do it themselves. Obviously, help them, guide them if they're in trouble or if they're about to do something very silly, intervene, but they do need to be the ones to actually do things so that they know how hard to turn or tighten something, what this thing does when I push this button, so that when they're off by themselves, they can actually do it safely and properly. Instead of actually doing it yourself, just watch and guide them, point them and say, okay, yeah, as you're doing this, it needs to be this tight. Let me just check. Yeah, that's perfectly tight, or no, just a little bit tighter. Yep, that's it, you've got it there. It's also important to delegate tasks so that you're not the one lugging all of the cylinders backwards and forwards and dragging divers around you in the water, because you're soon going to tire yourself out. And as an instructor, you need to look after number one so that you can look after the students yourself. If you're knackered, someone else is probably going to get hurt. So get your dive master to do it, or make it a fun game for the students to carry their cylinders backwards and forwards. Everybody learns in a slightly different way, and it's very important as an instructor that you can teach one concept in a few different ways so that anybody can understand it. I like to use analogies. Personally, I use car analogies a lot because most people, even children, are fairly accustomed to like different parts of a car and different vehicles and what they kind of do. So like your SPG on your regulators is like a fuel gauge on your car. Car tires are pumped up to about 2 or 3 bar of pressure, but there's about 200 bar of pressure inside of your cylinder. It can just put things in perspective for them that they can understand, instead of just throwing a bunch of new concepts at them. Just say, oh, this tank has 200 bar of pressure inside of it. What does that mean to a student? But if you say, yeah, it's got 200 bar, and if you think about like a car tire, how much they're pumped up, that's only got 2 bar of pressure in it compared to 200 bar. It just gives them a sense of perspective. But if a student doesn't seem to be getting it, don't just repeat what you've already said or what's in the textbook, because they already don't understand that. Don't repeat it. Try explaining it in a slightly different way that should work for them. You also need to be the voice for certain divers. I've had a few students, and you'll see it yourself, where they're doing the course not because they want to, but because someone else wants them to do it. And it's often parents that sign up their kids so that they can all come on a dive trip together, but you need to be able to see the signs of someone that doesn't really want to be there, doesn't want to go on this particular dive, and give them an easy out without losing face or creating a scene. You'll soon pick up on natural cues and behaviours of students that are not happy about the dive but too shy to say anything about it. They're just kind of going through the motions and peer pressure around them. You now have to tread the very delicate line of either calming their fears so that they're confident and they're actually happy and to go on that dive, or give them an out so that they can skip the dive and stay on the surface. And you have to make that call on the go in the real world and make sure that you make the right decision. Actually go diving yourself. A lot of instructors, myself included, they get into a routine of only going into the water with students with them. But it's important that you actually take some time to just, go scuba diving just for fun, because remember, you actually enjoy scuba diving. Not bringing students with you will help you hone your skills in real world scenarios and helps to separate scuba diving from work and recreation. They're two separate things. It can be hard because sometimes when you spend all week just teaching scuba diving and working with dive equipment, some days off, the last thing that you want to think about is more scuba diving. But definitely take the time to book dive trips ahead of time where you will just be diving for fun and not looking after people. There will come a time where you are asked a question that you do not know the answer to, and there are 4 ways to handle that. You can act like a politician and completely ignore the question and start talking about something else, but you can't really use that. That's not a great choice for dive instructors. You can make something up, which can be quite dangerous, especially if you're wrong. Try not to do that one. You can admit that you don't know. I don't know is a perfectly legitimate answer. It's a great choice because it proves that you're an honest instructor, and the student feels good that they're thinking at that high level that, oh, I've just asked a question that even my instructor doesn't know. And number 4 is kind of on from that, but you don't always admit that you don't know. It's let's work it out together. You and the student can work out the answer together. That helps to build the bond, because you go, okay, you've asked this question in your mind, you say, darn, I don't actually know the answer to this, but together we're going to work out the answer. The student knows how to work out the answer as you're guiding you through it, and you both come up with the answer together, you both look good, and you don't lose any face if you're too worried about saying that I don't know in front of a student. So yeah, what do you think the answer should be? And that's it for this video. As a professional diver, it's important for you to be professional in how you compose yourself, your equipment, and everything that you do. This is a career after all. Treat it like a job and know your worth as well. You have a very specific skill set that you shouldn't undersell, and build upon it as well. If you think that when you're applying for a job and everybody else who's going to apply for that job is going to have the same basic instructor ticket as you do, think about the additional skills that will help you stand above other candidates and try and get as many of those as possible. For more tips and advice, check out some of our other videos and articles either here on YouTube by subscribing to the channel, or heading over to our website and check out our new podcast, which is a tad more informal, just kind of me chatting about the latest scuba news and things. Visit podcast.scubadivingmag.com to find out where you can listen. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.